Jennifer, in your critical Q&A number 296, you said you used to daydream about food when you were in the Sea Org. I don't know if the saying is known in the US as well, but here in Germany, there's a popular saying: armies march on their stomachs. Considering the Sea Org is kind of military-like, as far as I understand it, why don't they at least feed their people well? Jennifer, this is a great question, and it actually does have an awful answer. So let me give it to you. So basically, the food allocation percentage of the budget for a Sea Org base, and let's go ahead and talk about PAC base, because that's what I know most about, and that's where I spend all my years in the Sea Org. There's a similar deal in Flag and any other Sea Org base, but how it works is you have a combined, on a Sea Org base, you have a number of different organizations. It's not all just one big happy family. It's all one big happy Sea Org group, but they're divvied up into these different churches, these different organizations. And so you have like the advanced organization, you have ASHO, and you have LA Org, and you have the management org, and you have Bridge Publications, and you have Author Services, and you have the IAS, the International Association of Scientologists. Their headquarters are in the PAC base. So all these different units, these Sea Org units, all work there. Each one of them has their own budgeting every week, their own allocation of money based on the income that they produced as a unit or as an organization. A percentage of that income is taken right off the top and sent to management. The management organization on the base is called the CLO, or Continental Liaison Office. That's where I used to work. In that management organization is a division for the base, the physicality of the base, the buildings, the grounds, the engineering spaces, the heating, the cooling, all that stuff is contained within a division of the CLO's organizing board, Division 3, or 3A, actually. It's the PAC Estates Division. And in that Estates Division is the Galley. It's a central Galley function that feeds all the base. Now, the way that the Galley functions is it is given an allocation from the CLO's budget. The CLO is receiving a percentage from all these organizations on the base. A certain percentage of that money is allocated to the chief steward. Chief steward is the one who gets the allocation and then has to do menu planning, budgeting how much they have against how much they can buy, to feed a crew of X number of people, 3 meals a day plus special meals for RTC and CMO whenever they ask. They get all kinds of special cheeses and meats and whatever else they want. That's the benefit of rank and privilege in the Sea Org, and it's a very, very tiny privilege, but that's what you get. So they might get cheese plates and stuff like that in the middle of the night or in the middle of the afternoon if they want, and the Galley will put that together. But most of the money is being used to feed the bulk of the crew. And we're talking about somewhere between, when I was there, about 1,000 meals a day, 3 times a day. Because they're not only servicing all the people on the PAC base, but they're also sending food over to the management over at the Hollywood Guarantee Building, the HGB. That's a 12-story building with a whole bunch of more people who are doing they are middle management. They are not international management. They are right below international management. So you have management at the West US level. You have this international worldwide management organization down the street. And the PAC Estates Galley is feeding all of them. So all of these units are sending in money, but how much money are they sending? Who decides what the percentages are? And based on those percentages, how much money are you going to have for each person? Now, I do not remember the numbers. This was not my area, but I do. But I'll say for purposes of analogy here for explaining this, if the ideal menu planning that had actually good food on it, meat, potatoes, vegetables, salads, they could do menu planning, and they tried. They did do this kind of menu planning. The chief steward desperately wanted to feed the crew better food. This was not a case of maliciousness on the part of the crew towards the rest of the crew. This was a case where the chief steward is being given X amount of dollars, feed the crew. And if the usual amount of money you would need to feed the crew is, let's say, 50 cents a head, and you only get 10 cents a head in money, you're only going to be able to buy lesser quality food, rice, beans. Those are real cheap in bulk. That's one of the reasons why rice and beans is a Sea Org thing. Eggs are cheap, certain kinds of meats and stuff. I mean, they can figure things out, but bottom line is they're not being given enough money on a weekly basis at a usual standard basis to actually afford to feed the crew a decent menu. And that's why they don't get it. Now, these adjustments, these percentages could be adjusted. A study could be done. They could go look and see what the problem is. It's not like the finance people on the base don't know this and don't understand why it is that there isn't enough money. If the organizations aren't producing enough income to send a certain amount of percentages to the management organization, and the management organization's percentages of what it can afford to put into the galley aren't very high, then the entire crew ends up suffering as a result of that. The percentages are fixed based on what international finance says. The finance systems of Scientology are designed by international finance people, not by people locally on the base. They are being given a finance system, and they just have to comply with it and make do as best they can. So that's how and why it is that the food at the PAC base is such crap, because almost every single week, the allocations of money to the food allocation came out to 20 to 30%, sometimes less, of what was actually needed to provide a very healthy, very stable, and very filling diet for everybody. And that's the awful truth of it. And the international finance guys and David Miscavige personally are well aware of those situations. Remember that at the international base, it's even more draconian because they have food cards and they have sleep cards. And they have, these benefit cards, and they'll just take them away from you, and then you don't get to eat at all. So it's even worse. The closer you get to Miscavige, the tougher the conditions become. At least we had a canteen we could go to that had stocks of some prepackaged food, candy bars, even some frozen meals for a while. They were stocking stuff like that. So you could theoretically go into the main mess and see it's crap for this meal and then go over to the canteen and supplement your, food that way if you got some money. And in desperation, people will shoplift from the canteen. I both did that and watched other people did that, paid it back, so anyway, so that's kind of how the food situation goes there. And I hope that clarifies why it is that the Sea Org, that clarifies how they do it, why they do it. Because if you keep people sleep deprived and food deprived, they're easier to control in some ways. Not on a really long-term basis, but remember that what goes on in the Sea Org is a traumatic bonding. It's rewards and punishments and rewards and punishments. And the rewards they're not that big of a deal. A movie out is a big, huge reward in the Sea Org. That's big. Doesn't really cost the organization much of anything to send 30, 40 people to the movies for an award night. They're pumped for, weeks, months, and you can continue abusing them every day. You dish out rewards on an infrequent, random, uncertain basis. You dole out punishments on a fairly regular basis, But the playback of these two things combined with the dogmatic thinking and the purpose of saving the world and all of that creates its own little toxic stew of awfulness, which we call trauma bonding. And you are sort of, and this is earlier explained by terms like battered wife syndrome, where, you're being abused, you're in a situation that's no good, but you can't get out of it because you're compelled to stay there because they're so good too. And they're so bad, but they're so good, and you get this head trip. And that's one of the biggest mechanisms of coercive control. So that's kind of why it's happening.